two of Broadway's leading ladies are taking on two of country music's leading ladies. Jessie Mueller and Megan Hilty are taking on two of the most iconic women in country music, Loretta Lynn and Patsy Cline, in the Lifetime film Patsy and Loretta. I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby. And just starting off with this, as I was watching the film, I kept thinking to myself, now, these are two characters who we've seen portrayed before in other films, namely particularly Sweet Dreams and Coal Miner's Daughter. Did that history of them on film, did that intimidate either one of you?
Not particularly for me, only because I very actively chose not to watch either of them. So the story that we're telling is very intimate, and it's their how they operated off stage, and there is little to no footage of Patsy off stage, and it was made very clear that how she performed and how she spoke on stage was very careful and very studied, because she didn't want to let on that she was possibly less educated than the average bear. So she was very aware of that. And so everything she said was very careful and studied. So that meant everything that wasn't in a performance mode was going to be a guess, based on the research that I did, and anybody that plays her, really. And so I didn't want to watch somebody else's performance and portrayal of Patsy, because it's all just a guess, right? And I didn't want to base my performance off of somebody else's guess, even though they're fantastic guesses. I've since watched those performances, and they're remarkable, of course. But I wanted to keep mine out of that realm and base it off of all of the research that I was able to do, and not somebody else's.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I kind of feel like the gift of what we got to do, like Megan's talking about, is that the story of this particular film was not really about either lady's career. That's sort of almost like a background plot point. It really is about their personal lives and their relationships with, their children and their spouses, and sure, their relationships with their careers, but mostly the relationship between each other. So I watched Coal Miner's Daughter just because, like, I kind of came into the process of the film kind of late. I was one of the last people to join, so I felt like I had a lot of catching up to do. So I was just like consuming information like a mad woman. So I was like, anything I could get my hands on. And in some ways it was, because Sissy Spacek is so brilliant in the film, it was kind of freeing watching that after doing a lot of research to be like, well, Sissy did her own thing, and she found what was authentic to Sissy, because I think people think of Loretta Lynn as being very authentic. So to me, it was about like trying to find the essence of who these people were, and then figuring out how that translates through you. But yeah, it was intimidating also, because just the fact that they are the icons that they are is intimidating. But I think the blessing of it is that, like Megan, like you said, it's the story that we were telling in this film is really about the personal aspect of their lives. So in that way, it was freeing, because, they became stars in a time where we didn't know a lot about artists' personal lives. So that was really cool, because we got to guess, we got to make it up and create it. And that was what was so fun about it.
Yeah.
And one of the things, both of you just kind of touched on it, was that they really were such different people, with Patsy having this more kind of polished, persona, whereas Loretta's persona has always been kind of like, here's what I'm thinking, and that's what I'm going to say, that's what I'm going to write about. So what do you guys think it was that drew these two together? Because on the surface, they are so different.
Right. That was one of the things that I found the most fascinating, because as different as they are, as different as their sort of personalities are, how they take in the world, how they, how information goes through them, how they problem solve, all those things. I think there's a little life imitating art. I think I've got a lot of Loretta in me. I think, Megan, you have a lot of Patsy, and you're like, I don't know. It was like Megan and I just clicked. I don't know. I think these two ladies clicked. They were meant to meet at the time they met, and yet they were they were dealing with a lot of the same things in their life. They were both juggling careers. They were both juggling careers in a predominantly male field. They both, although their backgrounds were different, I think they both had a similarity in the fact that they didn't come from like really well-off families. They both didn't have a ton of formal education. They both married pretty young. They both had children. So there was a lot that they could relate about with one another.
Right. And they're kind of like peanut butter and jelly, you know, like they all of these things that they had in common. They also were so different, but complementing each other. And something that I loved about Patsy is that she just inherently wanted to take care of people. She was kind of forced to take care of people from a very early part in her life, when she was really the breadwinner for her family, for her mother and her siblings, and that was kind of the role that she assumed for the rest of her life. She was the breadwinner in her own family, and she was known to take people under her wing and coach them for business purposes, specifically women. Loretta was not the only one.
Right, she wasn't the only one. Yeah.
Right. Well, Loretta, I feel it was the only one that she really got that close to through that. But that was something that she was known for. And I love that the script in this film really captures that so beautifully.
Yeah, because I feel like you don't see a ton of that. You don't see really positive female relationships portrayed in the media, well, the media in general. And this was like two women who you know, came to the top of their game and really supported each other through that and really benefited from each other's support. I think it's I find that, Megan and I've talked about this, we have felt this in our lives. We have experienced that in our lives. And it's sort of a shame that it doesn't get portrayed more. So that was one of the things that we loved about this film, was like, that's the headline.
Absolutely.
So because I've grown up, you know, with both of these ladies' music for my entire life, you know, to me, it feels like such a daring choice to have you guys actually, you know, sing the songs, because it's not something that everybody can do. So how did you guys go about, you know, you're both trained, you know, in the theater. This is a very different, I think, style of singing, I would assume, for you, like just going in between different registers, I assume. So how did you guys even work on those voices? Because after a while, you forget that you're listening to two people singing these roles and not just listening to recordings. You forget that after a while.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's amazing feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that they let us sing this music, because I find that there can be a huge disconnect if you are simply lip syncing to somebody else's voice, and whether you realize it or whether it's subconscious as a viewer, there's something. It just doesn't feel honest. And not only am I glad that they let us sing it ourselves, but they didn't touch it too much. They didn't futz with it. They didn't
auto-tune it a ton.
They didn't filter it so much that we sound like a computer, like many singers sound like these days. And it's not to the singer's fault, but I don't know why people think that they want to hear perfection. I love that we sound like human beings, you know, and you can actually hear us. And going into it, I know I'm not going to sound like Patsy Cline. I can't sound like that. I'm not a mimic. That's not what I do. But what I can do and what I love doing is getting really, really into the technical aspect of what sounds I can mimic sounds. I can't mimic her voice, but there are tones and there are qualities and there are ways that she shapes phrases and vowels and stuff that I can go after. And that's what I found really, really fascinating, and what I really loved about getting to sing these iconic songs and trying to put it out of my mind that, you know, these have already been done perfectly. You know, there's no
Right.
there's some comfort in that. You know, it's like I'm not going to make this better, but I can make this my own. And what they did for us, what Angelina did for us, was she put these songs in a different context. You know, like Crazy. It was Patsy singing at a memorial service. It wasn't her singing it perfectly in the recording studio. You know, we've never heard Patsy sing it at a memorial service. So this is our interpretation of what she would sound like singing after one of her dear friends had passed. You know, so it was very smart in the way that it was written, because it really gave us freedom to play and not feel so burdened by, I have to get this perfect or sound so much like Patsy or something like that. I think we were set up for success.
Yeah. And that was one of the first things we did, was lay down, do recordings of music and stuff. It was like one of the first things we touched with our music producer, Tim Lauer, who was super, super informed and helpful in developing all that. But Megan, you and I were joking. We've joked before about, like, you know, she and I, we'd kind of gone off and done our work, and then we showed up like the first day we're doing music, like, well, here's what I worked on in my bedroom when I was, you know, doing my vocal work, and then kind of like, well, what do you think? You know, that it wasn't like I didn't end up working with a coach or anything. It was Meg. I would say it was similar to you, Megan. It's like ton of research, ton of listening. I got super technical. Then I was like, this sounds awful. I do a lot of recording too, but I'm working on something like this because it sounds one way to me inside of my head and my skull and phonators, and very different sometimes to the way it's heard outside of my body. So I rely on recording and then listening back and be like, well, I tried to do this and this is how it actually sounded. So it was a little bit of guesswork, and getting really technical, and then having to put all that aside, because I think if anything, these gals, like, they weren't technically trained singers. And the thing that is so powerful about singers like Patsy and Loretta is, like, man, their souls just come through, their authenticity comes through. So then it was laying all that technical stuff aside and saying, okay, now I'm just a person interpreting my feelings through songs. So then you had to let it all go and kind of let it fly, but trusting that you'd done the work, and that someone would come up to you, like our vocal coach would come up and say, okay, well, maybe you want to tweak this one word, or I think the phrasing could be a little bit more like this. So it was a process, but it was super fun. I mean, it's fascinating. And I actually didn't know Loretta's catalog all that well. I actually knew Patsy's a little better before I started working on this. And man, it was just such a gift to get opened up to that vocally and as a songwriter. Loretta as a songwriter as well. So she's one of my favorite voices now.
And by the way, as somebody who studied singing, I appreciate you using the word phonator.
Good. Yeah.
Of course, we have to talk about the final scene. You know, recording in the singing, the two of them singing together in the Ryman. What was that like? Did that add another layer to the whole thing?
Are you kidding me? That day, we still say, I can call her in 20 years and be like, hey, Megan, remember when we dressed up as Patsy Cline and Loretta Lynn? We got to sing in the Ryman.
We danced around. Yeah.
We danced around. We had microphones. And
we did.
That was magical.
Yeah, we kept saying to each other, we have to stop and really realize what's happening here. You know, we have to stop and and really take this in, because this is magical. And I mean, not many people get to do that. So it was not lost on us.
Yeah. There's a feeling in that space. I've heard people talk about it in interviews and stuff, but it's true, man. The light shines through those stained glass windows, and there's just, it's like hallowed ground. But Megan, would you also say that, like, when you step onto the curve and you kind of come down forward, but it also feels really safe? Like the shape of the auditorium is kind of like it's hugging you, so it's intimidating, but it's not. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very, very intimate for as many people as it seats. It's a very special place, to say the least.
Yeah.
I feel like, I feel like classic country music certainly I see a real connection between classic country music and the music of the theater, because it's all about storytelling, and it's all about songs and lyrics and things like that. So I think that's one of the reasons why I've always gravitated to both of those formats. You guys learn things about country music that you maybe didn't know, or did it pull you in a direction that maybe you hadn't thought you would be going?
Oh gosh, yeah. For me, totally. What about you, Megan? I wish the Ken Burns thing was out before we had filmed the documentary that he did. But I was actually pretty proud of myself that I was like, I actually did find a lot of that research without watching this. So I like gave myself a pat on the back. Because I didn't know. I guess I would say I didn't know like the really, really early history of it. And I'd always been drawn to that kind of music and drawn to bluegrass music. And so learning more about just the roots of that, and coming from like the British Isles and music like that, and the influence of the banjo coming from the African-American community, like it truly is American music in the best sense of the word. And I think in a lot of ways it's gotten more what am I trying to say? Sort of categorized or put over here or put over there, or saying it's this people's music or it's that people's music. But like the inception of it came from everywhere, and I think that's so American, and I think that's so cool. That was one of the things I felt like I really got to learn through the process of working on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, like the whole history of women in particular in country music is fascinating and heartbreaking and disheartening in that it doesn't seem like while a lot has changed, it also seems like a lot hasn't.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Women are still not getting as much play on country music.
Still in 2020,
and women want to hear women like that. I don't get.
Yes.
Even people that wouldn't be like, well, actually, I do turn on a country station quite often when I'm driving in a car, because the best thing about country music is you listen for a minute and a half and you can sing along. You know what I mean? It's well structured music that like has a great story, a great hook, and it's like anybody can relate to it. But yeah, women are. I think you're right. I think women are still having a hard time, like, staking their flag in the ground of country music. And I'm not exactly sure why, because I don't pretend to know the inner workings of it, but as a listener, like those are the people I love the guys, and I get what all the guys did for us, but like I got the women are on my iPhone. You know what I mean? Like the Casey Musgraves and the Brandy Carlisles and the Lori McKenna's, like they're on my phone. They're the music I listen to.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I always really like to talk about with people who are playing these real people, especially somebody whose life was cut short the way Patsy's was, is we saw where Loretta Lynn's career has gone, and she's an icon and a legend. Megan, where do you think Patsy would be had that not happened? How do you think her career would have progressed?
She would be president of the United States of America. Well, I don't know. One of the things, she was just unstoppable. She was this force of nature, and it was actually something that during the course of my research got me really sad and ultimately angry that her life was cut so short. I mean, could you imagine the amount of things that she accomplished in her short life, what she would have done had she lived just a couple of years longer? I mean, it's so frustrating, and it legitimately makes me incredibly sad to think of the potential that was lost there.
You think about the breadth of music she would have created. Like, I know that she, you know what I mean? She felt really strong about her country roots. It would have been so interesting to see, like, would she have become more of a crossover artist, at least like in terms of the way other people would have branded her? I think that's really, it's like, would she have gone for that? I don't know, like as music changed though, because she had so many elements of so many different styles, and the way that she sang, it's like, she would have been one of those people that I think she is and was one of those people. It's like, who doesn't like Patsy Cline? It kind of doesn't go down the genre categories that people usually define themselves to.
It doesn't, because this is honestly why I feel like her voice is so iconic. It's because it literally resonates in a place that touches everybody. Her phrasing and her styling, within one phrase, she would combine so many different styles, like country, pop, soul, gospel, jazz, you name it, even classical. Like you go back and you see her. If you want to bring joy to your life, Google Patsy Cline yodeling, and the yodeling that she does, it's the same as all of the classical warm-ups that we learn, in classical music. She combines so many different styles of music in one phrase without even knowing it. And because she was so, I say stubborn in a very lovable way, she really, and loyal to her country roots. That's what she said she is, because that's who she is, her heart. But in her soul, she connected to everybody, which is why everybody hears that voice, and it literally resonates with them, because she was just able to access it all.
Mm.
Well, it just was such a joy to watch and such a joy to be immersed in that music. And congratulations to both of you on the Critics' Choice nominations. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for more interviews throughout the season. Megan Hilty, Jessie Mueller, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.